Assalamu alaikum students. Today we are doing IGCSE chemistry, paper 62, uh, paper 62 variant 2, all right, 2023. Let's start with the first question. Hot powdered lead 2 oxide is reduced by methane, a flammable gas. The products are lead, steam, and carbon dioxide gas. Figure 1.1 shows the apparatus used to reduce lead 2 oxide using excess methane. Powdered lead 2 oxide. So this is the apparatus. Powdered lead 2 oxide, methane gas is entering through here, waste gases are leaving through here. Alright, we probably have to name apparatus A, and what will we have to name in B? Let's see. um, so the first question is, name the item of apparatus labeled A. So labeled A clearly looks like a beaker, right? So A must be a beaker. Alright, so apparatus A is our beaker. Next question now, draw an arrow on figure 1.1 to show where the apparatus must be heated. Alright, so let's look at the apparatus. Alright, so we said hot powdered lead 2 oxide. That means the powdered lead 2 oxide must be heated. So our arrow should be over here, right? This should be the point of heating. This is where the lead 2 oxide must be heated, right? The arrow should be right there. Next question, explain why powdered lead 2 oxide is used and not large lump of lead 2 oxide. So this is basically from the chapter reaction kinetics or rate of reaction, right? When we use powdered form of a solid, we basically increase the surface area, right? So we'll say powdered lead has larger surface area. Powdered lead 2 oxide has larger surface area, hence it will have faster rate of reaction. It will have faster rate of reaction. That is why we use powdered lead 2 oxide. Next question, explain what happens at the point labeled B on figure 1.1. So what happens on the point labeled B? So if you see, um, so lead 2 oxide is reduced by methane, a flammable gas, right? So because there is ice and there is going to be gas coming, and the gas is going to be cooled down, right? All right. um, the products are lead, steam, and carbon dioxide. All right, so the reason why they probably have steam over here, the ice over here, is because of this steam. When steam comes, it will be condensed into liquid form, right? Because of the very low temperature of water, because of all this ice, right? So we will say that the steam which comes at B will cool down and condense, forming liquid water. And because there is a space, we can write due to the presence of, due to the presence of ice around the test tube. Full stop. Next, the waste gases contain methane. State why the waste gases should not be released into the laboratory. Why should the waste gases not be released in the laboratory if they contain methane? Because methane is flammable or combustible, right? So we'll just write methane is flammable. Full stop. Alright. Next question. Question number 2. A student investigates how the rate of reaction between aqueous iron 3 nitrate and aqueous sodium thiosulfate changes with temperature. The student does 5 experiments using the apparatus shown in figure 2.1. Alright. He is looking directly over here. Aqueous sodium thiosulfate he added in 50 centimeter cube of iron 3 nitrate. There is a printed sheet, there is printed text. Okay, experiment 1. He used a 50 centimeter cube measuring cylinder to pour 50 centimeter cube of iron 3 nitrate into a 100 centimeter cube beaker. Stand the beaker on a printed sheet as shown in figure 2.1. Use a 10 centimeter cube measuring cylinder to pour 5 centimeter cube of aqueous sodium thiosulfate into the beaker, and at the same time start a stop clock. All right, use a thermometer to stir the contents of the beaker. Well, these experiments, they are pretty long, right? 5 of them actually. So instead of reading them all, what you should do is just start looking at the questions, and then wherever they ask you related to the questions, you can go ahead and look at the experiments then. All right, so let's look at the first one. So here's the stop clock or stopwatch. All right, the inner circle is the minutes and the outer circle is the seconds. So we want to say the answer in exact seconds. All right, so let's look at the first situation. The first situation is that it is past 1 minute, right? It is past 1 minute. All right, that is 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50. So this one must be 50 seconds. 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56. So this must be 56 seconds. So it's actually 1 minute and 56 seconds. So this should be equal to 60 plus 56 seconds. So this should be equal to 116 seconds. All right, so the time, the minute one, it might be or it might not be on the exact value, but that is what we realize when we look at the hour clock as well, right? When we look at time, usually there are 12 numbers on a clock, right? And then if the clock, the smaller hand of clock is between 3 and 4, and the larger clock time, the larger is at 6, right? We say that the time is 3:30, right? We say that it's been 3 hours and 30 minutes, because the longer hand, which signifies minutes, is on the halfway mark at 6, which is 30 minutes, and it is in the middle, but we don't really consider it to be 3.5. We say okay, whichever is the previous number, that many minutes is it is. All right, so so this one would be 1 minute and 56 seconds, and I think we also have to measure the temperature simultaneously as well. So the temperature right now is between 20 and 21, so it should be 20.5, right? All right, 20.5. All right, the next one we see is at 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So it's 20 seconds, 1 minute and 20 seconds, right? 1 minute and, because this is 1 minute and 20 seconds. This should be equal to 60 plus 20. This should be equal to 80 seconds, right? You could just simply write these answers directly, you don't have to do the calculation, but I am showing you guys the calculation. Why not? In the third experiment, the time taken is 1 minute, and this should be 5 seconds. 6, 7, 8, 9. This should be 9 seconds. All right, so it is 1 minute and 9 seconds. This should be equal to 60 plus 9. This should be equal to 69 seconds. All right, we should also be measuring the temperature side by side. So for this one, the temperature is 25, 26, 27. All right, so the temperature right now is 27. All right, for this one, the temperature is exactly 30. All right, now the next one, the time is 0 minutes and 45 and 46 seconds. All right, so it is 0 minute 46 seconds. So this is equals to basically 46 seconds. All right, next we have the time 0 and 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. So it is 21, right? So this one is 0 minute 21 second, right? This one is 21 seconds. Okay, so what would be this temperature? 35, 36, 37. So this one would be 37 degrees. Alright, and what is this temperature? This one is between 46 and 47, so this one should be 46.5. It should be 46.5. Alright, and while I was writing 46.5, I realized that we are writing temperature to three significant figures. Therefore we should write temperature to three significant figures over here as well, over here as well, and over here as well. Everything should be three significant figures. Alright, next question. Write a suitable scale on the y-axis and plot your answer from experiment 1 to 5 on figure 2.2. Alright, so we want to write a suitable scale on the y-axis. Well, the x-axis they've done it for us. On the y-axis it is the time. So as you can see, the maximum time that went was 116 seconds. All the times are less than 116 seconds. Let's count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? Up to 6. So this should be 120, this should be 100, this should be 80, this should be 40, sorry, 80 ke baad 60, and after 60 it should be 40, and then after 40 it should be 20, and after 20 it should be 0, right? That can make sense. Alright, so we can do it like this. Now for some of you, if you look at this question, you will see that the x-axis does not start from 0. So you might be bothered by it maybe, but in maths you don't have to start a graph by 0. That is also something you should know. Alright, you can start a graph from any number. Like for example, if the set of values you get are 555, 560, 570, let's suppose, ठीक है? So you don't have to start from 0. You can start from 550. The graph can start from 550 then. Alright, so graph can start from any value. It's not a big deal. Okay, now we have to plot this graph. So for the smallest time 21 seconds, the temperature is 46.5. So the smallest time 21 seconds. Alright, so this must be 30. So between 30 and 22, this should be 22. So 21 should be over here, and the temperature at 21 is 46.5. So let's keep taking it. So this should be 46 and this should be 46.5, right? Yeah, right here. Just slightly back. Yeah, this should be 46.5, right? 46.5. This is our first point. Okay, so now the next point. So we've drawn this one. The last one we've drawn 21 second, 46.5 second. Next is on 46 seconds. The temperature is 37. Pretty simple. 40, 42, 44, 46, right here, that is 46. The temperature at that point is 37. This is 37. Alright, so we can just draw a line straight up to 46 like that, and go from over here to 46 like that. Okay, so the line, this is our point that we needed to draw. Okay, next we have 69 seconds and 30 degrees Celsius temperature. Alright, so 69, that is 70, right? So 69 would be right below 70, because just beneath the 70 box, this one would be 68, right? So every box is basically 2 seconds. Every small box is basically 2 seconds. So 69 would be between two boxes, between, in the middle of a small box, right? And the temperature at 69 was 30 degrees. So let's look for 30 degrees. So right here, this should be the 30-degree line. We go up and we meet our 69 line right here like that. Alright, so So this should be our third point. Okay, next we have 27 at 80 seconds. Okay, so at 80 seconds we are at 27. This is 27, right? uh, this value is 27, so we'll go up, right? Let's make this line, take it to 80, all the way to 80. So this must be our 80-degree mark. Okay, should start from 80 as well. This must be our 80-degree mark. All right, after that it is at 116 seconds and 20.5 degrees. All right, 116 seconds and 20.5 degrees. So this is 20.5, the temperature is 20.5. Alright, and it should go up to 116 seconds. So 116 comes after 110. This is 110, this is 112, 114, 116. So this is 116. Alright, and we want to show this temperature at 20.5. So I know that 20.5 is after this line, this thick line, right? This is 20, right? So 20.5 should be right after it. So that is why I'm going to draw my line like this, just a little further, okay, this way, and then I'll go down like that. This should be our last point. Alright, and then they've asked us to draw a smooth curve of best fit. Alright, so to draw a smooth curve of best fit, you can just remove all these lines. I mean, in exam you don't have to draw these lines. I drew these lines because I did not have a ruler, so I was just drawing these lines to keep going straight. Alright, now these are your points, okay, and you want to draw a curve of best fit. So what do you do to draw a curve of best fit? So you are going to draw a curve, right? You are going to draw a curve. Now the curve that I will draw is not going to be as great, right? Why is it not as great? It is not as great because drawing on a glass surface like on my iPad, it's going to not be as clean, right? But when you guys are drawing it with pencil on a paper, it's going to look a lot cleaner. All right, so like for example, let me try one last time, see if I can have a very nice curve. um, it's almost very difficult for me, but let's try. um, okay, so we've failed to go through the point. That's like number one disaster. All right, to my I think this is going to be as good as it gets. What you don't what you should not do is don't pick your pencil up after a point. Don't pick your pencil up after a point. All right, go in a smooth curve. All right, go in a smooth curve. All right, so never pick your pencil up, go in a smooth curve. That is how you want to draw it. All right, the examiner is also going to expect that you take the curve as far as you can with the graph. Okay, so that is how you need to do it. All right, next, reduce the experiment in which the rate of reaction is fastest. So in which reaction the rate is fastest? The reaction in which the time taken is minimum and the temperature is maximum. That is experiment number 5. So we are going to say experiment 5. All right, next question, use your graph to predict the temperature of solution when the text becomes visible after 55 seconds. Show your working on 2.2. So at 55 seconds, if the text becomes visible, so for that we want to look at 50, right? 55 would be after 52, 54 and 56, between them. So right here we are going to go and we are going to match over here, and we are going to come down like that, right? And if we look, this is 31, 32, 33, 34 degrees Celsius, right? So the answer that we should get is 34. All right, so 34 degrees Celsius, that should be our answer. Now the thing is The thing is, um, these lines, they are what are going to get you the marks. All right, this answer is not going to get you the marks. This answer you can write, but these lines you have to draw. All right, do not erase them after working this stuff out. Let them be. All right, move on to the next question now. Explain why wrapping the beaker in cotton wool after it has been heated will improve the accuracy of the results obtained. Because there will be less heat loss, right? There will be less heat loss, right? So we'll say cotton wool is a good insulator of heat. Cotton wool is a good insulator of heat, hence it will decrease heat loss and maintain constant temperature of, I don't even know if the beaker is used or not, so I will say of reaction mixture. This is how you guys have to write your answers as well. Do not write anything if you don't know. Was the reaction happening in a beaker? I don't remember. Okay, so because we did not read the whole question, because the question was very lengthy. Even if you did read it, you'd probably forget half of it because it's of one page. Reading it once won't have you remember everything. You are going to have to refer to it one time and time again when the question asks. But for now, we know cotton wool, why it is used. It is used for insulation. It is used to prevent heat loss of the of the reaction mixture, right? So it's called the reaction mixture. Reaction mixture is a term you can use every time. All right, explain why it would be an improvement to measure the volume of aqueous iron 3 nitrate in a burette rather than a measuring cylinder. Because burettes are more accurate, right? They have a higher degree of accuracy, right? So burette, burette, burette have a higher degree of accuracy compared to measuring cylinder. All right, so when compared to measuring cylinder, we see that burettes, they are actually, I believe, 10 times more accurate because they have an extra zero point 0.1 ml to which you can measure stuff. All right, next question. Suggest why it would not be an important suggest why it would not be an improvement to add the aqueous sodium thiosulfate using a pipette. Would it not be an improvement to add it using a pipette? Well, I do not know. Now we are going to have to see how were we adding sodium thiosulfate 5 centimeter. Use 10 centimeter cube measuring cylinder and to pour 5 centimeter cube of sodium thiosulfate in the beaker and at the same time start a stop clock. All right. So why would that not be? Why using a pipette would not be an improvement? Uh, because, well, there are there could be multiple reasons. It's a 1 mark question. So the first thing that comes to mind is you are adding 5 centimeter cube of sodium thiosulfate. That's a very small quantity, right? Now a pipette, it works slowly compared to a measuring cylinder, right? When you the reason why in labs we use a measuring cylinder in the first place is so that all the reaction has been added simultaneously, so the rate of reaction can be easily determined, right? Using a pipette, adding stuff drop by drop, it's not going to have the same effect as adding with the measuring cylinder. The reaction would be uneven, right? Like for example, this time taken was 21 seconds for the reaction to be completed. This would differ if we were adding from a pipette, right? So pipette would change the rate of reaction because it's a slow way of transferring liquids. That is something you can write, right? So we are going to say pipette can prolong the rate of reaction as it is a slower method of transferring liquid. All right, let me just read the question as well, see if this has made sense. Bunsen burner temperature has increased by about 5 degrees Celsius. Oh, so yeah, so you want to add 5 centimeter cube and simultaneously start the stop clock. With pipette, you can't add 5 centimeter cube all at once, right? Pipette, you add slowly. So when do you start the stop clock? Next question suggests why the aqueous sodium thiosulfate must be added after aqueous iron 3 nitrate has been heated and not before it is heated. So why should iron 3 nitrate be heated first and then sodium thiosulfate added? Why can't it be that we add sodium thiosulfate and then heat the nitrate and then see the reaction? Well, the very simple technical answer would be that because the reaction might start but at a slower pace initially, and then when you heat it up, the reaction might progress. So exact values or exact calculations um, can't be right. So we would say that while we are heating, the reaction would start, right, but it could not have been registered. All right, so we can say that if sodium thiosulfate is previously added, if sodium thiosulfate is added earlier, then during heating it, not even use the word might, we know it will start reacting. All right, it will start reacting. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. Now let's move on to the next question. Describe how the results of experiment would change when experiment is repeated using a 250 centimeter cube beaker in place of 100 centimeter cube beaker. Explain your answer. Changes in result and explanation. Beta, if we are using a 250 centimeter cube beaker, you should know that a 100 centimeter cube beaker is not as fat, right? It doesn't have that much width, but a 250 centimeter cube beaker is definitely going to have more width. Now the reaction is based upon your visibility. Because you are going to use a 250 centimeter cube beaker, but you are still going to use 50 centimeter cube of your liquid. 50 centimeter cube of your liquid in the 100 centimeter cube beaker would cover a very large space, so it would be difficult to visualize or not visualize whatever it was, to see what is beneath the beaker if it is a 100 centimeter, because there's so much liquid above it, right? Because all the liquid is on top of each other. But in this one, the liquid is completely spread out, right? So you would be able to see through much earlier. You would be able to see through much earlier, right? So uh, so results change. Time taken to see the printed paper. Was it a printed paper? Let me just see what they had said. Printed text. Time taken to see the printed text will increase, or is the printed text disappearing or is it appearing? Look down from above the beaker and when the text on the printed sheet becomes visible. Alright, so time taken for printed text to become visible decreases. Time taken for printed text to become visible, yeah, but to be seen, because we don't have space, so we can't say to become visible, decreases. Alright, next explanation. Because there is less depth, right? In a 250 centimeter cube beaker, there is less depth of our AQU EOUS aqueous solution. Alright, so the 250 centimeter cube beaker, there is less depth of our aqueous solution. Next question. A student tests two substances, solution F and solid D. Tests on solution F. Table 3.1 shows the tests and the student's observations for solution F. The student divides solution F into three portions. Table 3.1, do a flame test on the first portion of solution F, light green color. Test 2, to the second portion of solution F, add a 1 centimeter depth of aqueous sodium hydroxide and a piece of aluminum foil. Warm the mixture gently and a gas is produced. Alright, first reaction, the color is green. We know what color that is, right? Do you know? It is mentioned at the end of the paper, but it is good if you remember. Alright, to the second portion of solution F, add 1 centimeter cube of sodium hydroxide and a piece of aluminum foil. This is to test for nitrates, right? Effervescence was seen, gas, red litmus paper turned blue, so nitrate is also present. To the third portion of solution F, add a 1 centimeter cube depth of dilute nitric acid, followed by a few drops of aqueous silver nitrate. No change. Alright, so meaning there is no chloride. There is no chloride. Alright, describe how to do the flame test used in test 1. How do you do the flame test? So you basically say use a wire loop, right? You take a wire loop, take a wire loop. It must be completely clean. It must be completely clean and made from an inert material, from an inert material, full stop. What do you do next? Dip it in the solution. Now because we are doing test 1 and test 1 is solution F, it is a liquid, so we say dip it in the solution. Dip it in the solution and then place the wire loop in the blue or transparent region of the Bunsen flame and observe the flame color, right? This is how you do the wire loop test. Next, identify the gas given off in test 2, that is ammonia, right? Anything that turns red litmus paper blue, that gas is ammonia. Ammonia, NH3. Alright, now identify solution F. So what should be solution F? Because we know that it should contain nitrate ions. How do I know it should contain nitrate ions? Because of this test. And the light green color, who produces that? You should remember, beta, barium is the only flame, green flame that you have to study, right? Look at this, light green color is only barium. Copper is blue green, but it can only be considered blue as well. Barium is the only ion that produces a light green colored flame, and over there that is what is mentioned, right? So it should be barium nitrate, right? Identify the solution. The solution is AQUEOUS aqueous barium nitrate, BaNO3 whole twice, because that is the formula, right? BaNO3 whole twice. Next question. State what would be observed if student adds dilute sulfuric acid to another portion of solution F. Because sulfuric acid contains sulfuric acid contains the sulfate ions. We know what happens when barium and sulfate meet. A white precipitate is produced, right? A white precipitate will produce. Why would a white precipitate produce, beta? Because barium sulfate are insoluble salt. Tests on solid G. Solid G is iron 2 carbonate. Alright. About 10 centimeter cube of dilute sulfuric acid is added to solid G. Any gas given off is tested. Observations. Alright. So any gas given off is tested. So we'll say effervescence of a colorless gas. VESCENCE, effervescence of, we know carbon dioxide is going to be released, right? Because carbonate when reacted to sulfuric acid produces carbon dioxide. Effervescence of a colorless gas which turns lime water milky when bubbled through it. So we've mentioned everything in it. When bubbled through it, full stop. That is our that is our um, test, right? This is how I explain you should write, right? When gas is being produced, if it is colorless, you can't say carbon dioxide gas is produced. No, no, no. You have to say that a colorless gas is produced, and because it is carbon dioxide, you have to tell its test, which turns lime water milky. All right. Next question, to the product from E. To the product from E, like when sulfuric acid was added, right? Aqueous sodium hydroxide is added drop by drop until in excess. So basically when iron 2 carbonate is going to react with sulfuric acid H2SO4, you should know that it is going to produce iron sulfate FeSO4, right? And it is going to produce carbon dioxide, and it's going to produce water. Now FeSO4 is the Fe plus 2 one. Why? Because iron 2 carbonate, right? So over here iron is of plus 2 oxidation state. So what happens when sodium hydroxide is added drop by drop? So a green precipitate will form, right? We say that iron 2 is green colored. Green precipitate forms. Now the real question which most of us do not remember is whether does it dissolve in excess or does it not dissolve in excess. If it dissolves in excess, it would give a dirty green color. If it does not dissolve in excess, it will stay insoluble, right? So you can check from the bottom, it would not dissolve, I remember, sahi hai, but you can confirm from over here. When we add it in aqueous sodium hydroxide, it remains insoluble in excess and turns brown near the surface on standing. All right. So the iron that is on the surface oxidizes actually, right? That is why it turns brown. It becomes Fe plus 3, but we don't have to write that down. We can just write that precipitate remains insoluble in excess. Precipitate remains insoluble in excess. EXCE double S, excess. Next question. A metal polish is a mixture of four substances. The properties of these substances are shown in table 4.1. Name of substance: propanol. Solubility in water, soluble. Ethanoic acid is also soluble. Iron 3 oxide is insoluble and it's a metal polish. Okay. Silicon 4 oxide is also insoluble and it's also used as a metal polish. Reaction with dilute nitric acid: dissolves, react when warm to form a soluble salt. Okay. Alright. And no reaction. Plan an experiment to find the percentage by mass of silicon 4 oxide in the mixture. Your plan should include how you will calculate the percentage of silicon 4 oxide in the mixture. Alright, a very easy question. And how many marks is this? 6 marks. They are basically saying that let's suppose we have a box of polish, right? And that polish is made up of 4 things, right? It is made up of propanol, it is made up of ethanoic acid, it is made up of iron 3 oxide, alright, and it is made up of silicon 4 oxide. Now this question is extremely easy, you just have to think about it. They are basically asking you how much of this polish, for example if this polish was 500 grams, how much mass is silicon dioxide. Let's suppose silicon dioxide was found to be 120 grams in it. So percentage would have been calculated by dividing the total mass and silicon mass multiplied by 100. You would get the percentage. This is just one scenario, right? This is just one scenario. Now over here, how will you do it? You can see that propanol and ethanoic acid are soluble in water. Here's how you're going to do it. So you're going to take the polish, you're going to measure its initial weight. Okay, initial weight. So we are going to say take the metal polish and weight initially on a digital balance, or whatever you want to measure it on. Nowadays in labs there are all digital balances because they are more accurate. Alright, so you want to measure the uh, original mass of metal polish, right? Now you want to do is record it, record this weight, full stop. Now take the metal polish and add it to excess of water and stir it completely using a glass rod, full stop. Stir it completely using a glass rod. Alright, so you want to stir it completely using a glass rod. Continuous stirring, right? Until no more solid dissolves. Until no more solid dissolves. At this point, once you've seen that no more solid is dissolving in water, what is the solid that is not dissolving and what has dissolved? You will say, sir, propanol and ethanoic acid from the polish would have dissolved, but iron oxide and silicon oxide would not have dissolved. And you would be right because the two of them are insoluble, right? And who do you want to measure? You want to measure silicon oxide. So you basically want to extract all the silicon oxide out of the whole thing. So this is a question about separation and purification. So you've used water, you've used a suitable solvent to remove half the things from the system, right? Now you are going to take the iron 2 oxide and silicon 4 oxide. How you are going to filter it? Now take the solution, now take the mixture and filter it. Take the mixture and filter it to collect the residue. Filter it to collect the residue. Alright, so you want to collect the residue. Now what? Once you've collected the residue, now the residue contains iron 3 oxide and silicon 4 oxide. Okay, so you can even mention it over here, which are WHICH, which are iron 3 oxide is Fe2O3 and silicon dioxide is SiO2, right? We can mention them according to their chemical formulas. Now out of these two, you know that they differentiate on one basis. They react with nitric acid, the iron oxide does, and it forms a soluble thing, right? And you should know that nitric acid is an acid and iron 3 oxide is a base. When acid and base react, they make salt and water. So there is nothing wrong, with using iron 3 oxide and nitric acid. All we need to do is just add excess of dilute nitric acid and all the iron 3 oxide will react and dissolve. Now the solution would be of acidified it would be an acidified solution. It would have some nitric acid left, and it would have water, right? So you would just filter silicon dioxide out, rinse it completely, and then you'll have pure silicon dioxide. You would dry it then in an oven or in the sun, and then you would weigh it, and you will find out the exact weight of the silicon dioxide in that polish, right? That all thing is understandable. So we are going to write that down now. So we are going to say, okay, now add excess of dilute nitric acid and also warm the mixture so that all iron 3 oxide reacts and dissolves, leaving only SiO2 as the insoluble solid. Insoluble solid. Full stop. Once all, once no more, once no more solid is dissolving, filter the mixture and collect the residue, full stop. Rinse it completely, not completely, thoroughly. Let's write it thoroughly. Rinse it thoroughly with distilled water and dry, and completely dry it in a drying tray or oven, etc. Full stop. In labs there are also ovens for drying stuff, right? It is normal, so we can use the word oven, all right, etc. Now once it is completely dry, once the SiO2 is completely dry, the SiO2 is completely dry, weigh it and use the formula below to calculate percentage composition in of percentage composition of silicon 4 oxide in composition of silicon 4 oxide in metal polish. All right, now you will put the formula silicon 4 oxide, you will put the formula percentage composition equals to weight of dried SiO2 divided by original weight of polish multiply by 100. This is how you uh, find percentage, right? You multiply stuff by 100, right? And this will be your percentage composition of SiO2 in the metallic polish. All right, so this is the complete experiment. I hope you guys understand. Thank you so much. Inshallah we'll do another past paper soon. Bye bye.